And I know that in Israel, it's a special day. It's Yom HaZikaron. And so I especially thank those of you who are tuning in tonight because of that. And in keeping with the night, it's Memorial Day. And it starts at night with a siren, and then there will be one tomorrow. It's a solemn day here. And so with that, I chose work that I wanted to showcase the way this book is working as a memoir. It's my memoir, but it's also trying to link in, I guess all memoirs do, the work that I've translated from other languages, the work of people whose names we don't know, but who influence our lives, the food that we eat that influences us, even though we don't know where it comes from. All of these things, I want to link the living and the dead today in the memoir and also in the reading. I'm going to read a piece that I don't usually read called Ordinary Light. And you'll see, I hope, why I chose this piece. So it's called Ordinary Light. And it is a little bit about Hanukkah, but I hope you'll forgive that because it also links in the different generations of people who live in Israel today. The first synagogue I ever visited was the Mikveh Israel Synagogue in Curacao, a Caribbean island off the Venezuelan coast. I'd been hired to research the 500-year history of the Sephardic Jews who ended up in Venezuela. It was summertime. On the beach nearby, the sand was warm and golden, echoing the outer walls of the synagogue. The sand on the floor inside was cool and white, as were the walls. The arched open windows were lidded with cobalt blue glass, the color the sky would become by the time the service was over. Service times varied each week with the sunset, and I, a recovering Catholic, had found that charming. At some point during the service, I suddenly felt I could breathe. I realized I must have been holding my breath the previous 10 years. My life until I left our South Texas family rice farm to go to university had been circumscribed by light. At sunset, I fed the poultry and the livestock as I did at sunrise before school. The August rice harvest began after the sun had burned off the dew, and it ended at dusk. But since leaving the farm, light had become abstract to me. There was no longer anything in my life I could not do using the light of bulbs or candles, nothing for which I needed the sun. Part of the gift of this synagogue was the miracle of light, ordinary light. There's almost no mention of Hanukkah in the Mishnah, the oral Torah, redacted between 180 and 220 CE by Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi. He redacted it because the Jews were being persecuted and time was passing and they were afraid that the details of oral tradition of the Second Temple would be forgotten. During my years in Venezuela and Curacao, I visited houses in which families lit candles to the Catholic saints every Friday night. I had been hired to research, among other things, the first bishop of Argentina, who had been born into a converso family. During the Inquisition, Portuguese converso families had not told their children they were Jewish until bar mitzvah age, and they had been sent to Jesuit schools. So much of the story of the Sephardic Jews of Curacao resonated with Hanukkah. Scholar Ruben Margolis suggests that the Mishnah redactors left out mention of Hanukkah because they feared reminding the Romans of the recent Bar Kokhba revolt and for fear of antagonizing the monarchy, who had instituted a don't ask, don't tell rule for the first 40 years after the Spanish expulsion. The Jews of Portugal had placed sand on the synagogue floors to muffle the sounds of their footsteps, and today the sand is a reminder. The Protestant Netherlands were one of the few places in Europe which provided Iberian Jews refuge from the Inquisition, and the Sephardim began to move to Amsterdam after 1600, sometimes 200 years after their forced baptisms. Their Jewish identity was evident in their two sets of names. They could also be recognized as crypto-Jews because they lit candles on Friday nights, their homes lacked statues of the saints, and they did not mix meat and dairy. From Amsterdam, Jews arrived in Curacao by invitation of the Dutch West India Company in 1659. My last years as a practicing Catholic, the image of a divinized human male body hung prominently above the altar in churches used to cause me physical unease. I usually had to leave to avoid becoming ill. I was suspicious of miracles in institutional settings. I was suspicious of miracles. Josephus didn't call it Hanukkah, but rather the Festival of Lights. This 8-day festival was initiated to celebrate the rededication of the temple by Yehuda HaMaccabee after Antiochus IV Epiphanes had profaned it. So they were glad at the revival of their customs when, after a long time of intermission, they had unexpectedly gained the freedom of their worship. Josephus didn't call it a miracle, but rather this liberty beyond hope. Tradition says a single consecrated jug of oil miraculously burned for 8 days, but I don't bother that much about the oil. I don't even need there to have been a guerrilla war led by Yehuda HaMaccabee. It could have been, as some people suggest, a successful petition that led to the re-sanctification of the temple. It's enough not to have to worship humans as gods. It's enough to have religious freedom. It's enough to have peace and not war. It's enough to have light. Nassim Goan suggests the Mishnah did not mention Hanukkah because the celebration was so common, there was no need to explain it. Ordinary light was enough. So it's a little off season, but it is linking the generations here. And now I will read a poem that was a poem. This book is a memoir and it's written in prose, and I don't know if you can see the blocks here if you don't have a copy. A lot of these started off as syllabic poems, and then I crushed them into prose blocks, which was very, very painful and kind of avant-garde because the syllabic is all about the visual. But this was one of them. It's called Guessing Your Way In. To get here today, I have to think about things I don't like thinking about. Namely, my father, an A1, just out of high school, 3 months married. Me, I was conceived in panic, no doubt. To get here today, it wasn't necessary that all 4 boys with whom my father boarded the bus to boot camp 2 years later be dead, though they were. It's not my fault, and forgive me, I'd mouth to the shiny black mirror of the Vietnam War Memorial on the mall every Veterans Day, the 5 years I lived there. But Yusuf Kamunyaka has already written that poem. To get here today, I had to believe in the difference between causality and correlation, as I argue in this family court for full possession. For comic relief, I'm talking to Vince about Texas Modern Hispanic Gentleman's ad for Kettle One vodka in this month's Texas Monthly. Hey, get a guy in here with a fedora and a guy with a bow tie, and maybe a mustache or a goatee. Yes, a goatee. Well, 1 goatee and 1 bow tie. Make it red. The ad screams demographic marketing on behalf of people who are guessing their way in. I feel that way all the time, I concur, but I'm not as photogenic about it, that's for sure. Everyone feels that way. I mean, what do you wear when you look at Aurora Borealis? I just don't know. Vince swears he heard someone have that conversation. It's nice to know somewhere someone has that problem. It makes me happy. Like the time my cat got hit by a car and my father had to take her to the fence with a gun to, quote, put her out of her misery. And I was shocked into a kind of understanding to see my father's face covered in tears. That explains the anger whenever I cried over butchering the calves. He would never have survived the war. And I'll read one more piece that had been originally a poem that I again crushed into prose. And this one is called Astrophysics. It's a little bit lighter. One bird or another. The everything I was before I am. The field beyond the kitchen doors littered with sticks. The stardust gritty over the morning floor. Your cupped hand dipping into me. All the hair and dead cells I swept and thrown out. Ashtrays emptied and garbage. Does a word ablaze with sparklers leave a scar in the air? There was a moment in that place. We were two mirrors cracked open to the same sky. We were two feathers tumbling over each other, missing the same bird. The fields still fill with sticks, old trunks, the seeds my daughter collects in her pockets, she steals. So much fluff goes into the making that it's a tall order to put it back once it's all out. And I am only one word away, one word out of you, one bird or another bird. And I think that was 10 minutes. Are we doing 10 minutes? Are we doing more? Q.
Oh, I just realized that I was muted. I think if you'd like to do one more, you could do one more. If you have another one, that'd be great.
Okay, so I'm just trying to think. I had another prosy piece. I'm going to do one more. Now that my daughter's sleeping, I'll do one more about her. And this is called Elsa Schiaparelli, Mio Ci Prada, and Amalia and Me at the Met. It also had been syllabic. It's quoting Schiaparelli. With some difficulty, I obtained seeds from the gardener, and these I planted in my throat, ears, and mouth. This is where the title of the book comes from, The Mouthful of Seeds. And this is an art exhibition on fashion. To have a face covered with flowers would indeed be a wonderful thing. Bright metallic insects around the chosen throat and sprays of crinkled roses in the hair, to wear a shoe on my head, to cover my shoulders with monkey fur. My daughter is drawing the clear plastic shoes with plastic pink heels and plastic tiers of chandelier pendants, Prada, and the pink dress with butterflies. She pulls my journal from my hands, write pink on top, she commands. All her models accompanied by babies in bellies and dresses like her father's wife. Her favorite hat's the lynx head and paws with its jaw opened, blood on the chin. To have a face covered with stars would indeed be a wonderful thing, a constellation on your naked chest, to have spilled a cosmos onto your dinner jacket, to have been lifted by buoyant shoulder pads through ambiguity. A quote, "Men respect strong women. They do not necessarily love them." Schiaparelli should know. "I want to stay here forever with Daddy," says my daughter. "I know, I'd love to stay here too, not to go back at all again," I agree. To have a mouthful of seeds would be a wonderful thing. To be drowned, a throat filled with hard, shiny points, like the mark left by the tip of a pencil, poised on a page. "No, I mean to stay with Daddy. You can go back." Said Mio Ci Prada, "The women who wear my clothes vary dramatically. Of course, I'd hope they were clever and interesting. I'd also hope that my clothes made their lives a little easier, that it made them feel happier, not more beautiful necessarily, just more of a person." "Oh, if that's what you want, that's fine with me," I say, splaying Prada quotes across my notebook. "Does feeling like a person make life easier, happier?" "Really? You just let me go away from you?" As a paperweight, I was always being told that I was too fickle. As a placeholder, I was told I dressed too personally. There's no correct response. What do you want me to say? That to have a face covered with black netting, a doll hat, a chest, an armor against a Moor and its aftermath would be wonderful. To have a face covered with butterflies, to have butterflies in the stomach, across the shoulders, over the groin, over the kneecaps like scabs. I want you to say you would not let me go. They created hard chic and naive chic and ugly chic, and zipper means lightning clothes. Schiaparelli designs hers with electrical cords. I wouldn't let you go. Some of Schiaparelli's buttons, naive chic, are acrobats. Well, I'm going anyway. Goodbye. I like those best. Okay.
Thank you. That was wonderful, Marcela. Thank you so much. I think there's actually we can all clap for you.
Oh, thanks.
So I thought it might be nice for us to open this up to a brief Q&A. If anyone in the audience has questions, you can drop them in the chat box, which is just to the right, and Marcela will answer them.
Okay.